This is Main Street Papakura, and these are the veterans of the Long Range Desert Group, the LRDG, who in World War II fought a clandestine campaign against Hitler's armies in North Africa. Alongside the LRDG was a tiny military unit whose reputation would be forged in the desert, the British SAS.
Members of the Long Range Desert Group, we honour you for your service to your country.
Today, as the veterans are honoured, a new generation of young Kiwi men is preparing to fight overseas. They are the soldiers of the New Zealand SAS. After a gruelling selection and 9 months of training, 5 of New Zealand's top soldiers were chosen for New Zealand's elite fighting unit, 1 NZSAS.
You are now one of us.
You don't let it go to your head because that's just the beginning.
Their initial task was to train for 21st century warfare.
September 11th, 2001 saw this unit transform itself to meet a new and emerging threat.
But first, they would begin at the bottom.
If you can't pick up a broom and sweep, where's your humility?
Briefed as to the expectations of an NZSAS soldier, the 5 were immersed into counter-terrorism training.
You're ultimately the fourth wheel to a patrol that's on operations. Do they trust you? Are you going to be good enough?
After proving themselves in CT, now they must move from urban battlefields to the open terrain. After 3 months inside New Zealand's most secretive military unit, life has changed considerably for its 5 newest members.
Training wheels have come off. The burden and responsibility goes back on you, to go and do a bit more of your own training.
Those still on probation, they're more at ease with a life where only immediate family and friends are aware of their real profession.
Most of the people know that you're in the army, and the army's a big place. Or you're in the Navy. Whatever sort of suits you on the day, really.
Let's speed it up now.
Although each excelled in the counter-terrorism training, the 5 know without combat experience under their belts, they're far from being true NZSAS soldiers.
You want to get out there, you want to be deployed, you want to go on operations, and you want to test everything you've learned.
It's all you're here for, is to do your job. Yeah, you're here to do your job.
The next 6 months will be spent on advanced combat training, also known as Green Roll.
Green Roll Squadron is that element that would deploy offshore to conduct sort of what we would term to be traditional war or combat operations.
The first phase of Green Roll is advanced infiltration.
The troops are mainly environmental. So, for example, the amphibious troop conducts waterborne operations. The air troop, its infiltration skill is advanced parachuting, and the mountain troop carries out climbing tasks and operations above the snowline.
During the 9-month cycle of training, the 5 experienced all the infiltration techniques. Now they'll be assigned to one permanently. The squadron commander gives notice to the 5. 1 will go to amphibious troop, 3 to air troop.
Yeah, I can fall like a rock, so you can be air troop.
And the last man to mountain troop. With their troop allocations decided, the 5 now begin their advanced infiltration training.
Okay, so by the end of it, training year is, as we've already discussed, looking at your own infill skill training.
So with the exercise in particular, we'll be concentrating on basic survival there. We'll be looking at snow caves and those sort of elements we've spoken through.
For the 5, there is an additional private challenge to meet. That is to earn the respect of their NZSAS peers.
After a while, some cases it took a year and a half. FIA would actually come up and say, hello, how you go? And then from that time you sort of realise that you're accepted into the unit.
They're very Joe cool, and I'm sure you've noticed, you sit around and have a conversation with them, there are a lot of silences. Because, they sit there and somebody will start up something. Very difficult to have a real conversation with them. They just nod and they, yeah, mate, and there'll be a silence for 5 minutes.
You don't want people who have absence of emotion. They're dangerous because they can't experience fear. Therefore, they'll do things without thinking about the consequences.
The soldier selected for mountain troop must learn to infiltrate into some of the harshest and deadliest alpine conditions in New Zealand.
SAS soldier is about being able to fit in with, adapt or mould to his environment.
Mountain Troop's newest member soon discovers the endurance levels needed to travel across the Southern Alps are unlike anything he's faced before. As they continue their dogged progress, they stop only to hide the tracks of their skis to confuse any enemy. The temperature falls further and the terrain worsens. No one says a word. This is all in a day's work for Mountain Troop.
There are people who operate far from any comfort zone, far from any safety zone, and they do so for extended periods of time.
As the weather closes in, they have no choice but to make camp.
Just working out the best systems, and just mentally hardening up, because you're going to freeze. When you look at Shackleton and those guys in the Antarctic, they survived all those years ago, and there's still guys in New Zealand who've got all the stuff on them and die.
But for 3 days, there is no improvement in the conditions. With an intended supply drop 2 days away on foot and depleted rations, they move into survival mode.
Self-preservation is great training. It makes you think about yourself. And it's got to be cold and brutal like that.
Eventually, it's the sniper rifle that keeps them fed, not a moment too soon. A fast-moving weather front forces Mountain Troop into another phase of training. With no time to waste, they must abandon the tents and build a snow cave. This ice home will protect them from the elements, and here they must stay until the weather clears.
We probably crammed 6 or 7 years worth of work into that day. There's no 8-hour day. There's no knocking off for a break. This is my break, we're going to have a break. If I felt that we couldn't have a meal, we didn't have a meal.
After 5 days, the weather finally breaks, and with it the chance to get fresh supplies. For Mountain Troop's newest member, it's been a baptism of endurance. For one of his mates, the challenge is not in the alpine cold, but in Auckland's bustling port, where the newest soldier in Amphib Troop is about to take part in a covert nighttime infiltration.
Those people who are advanced swimmers, they'll go into the amphibious troop.
In silence, the NZSAS divers slip into the water from a small jetty. Their target is a ferry, doubling as an enemy vessel. "15 metres below the surface, the divers navigate along the harbour floor. The team must now use maximum stealth and speed to board the ship. On the upper decks are patrolling guards, their movements furtively observed by an NZSAS support craft. In this exercise, Amphib Troop must board the craft by scaling its starboard side. And the clock is ticking. Once the guards finish a sweep of the deck, the divers have just 5 minutes to seize the ship's bridge. The first NZSAS trooper makes a rapid ascent up the equivalent of a 10-storey building. At the top, he gives the all clear to the rest of the team.
Stand by. Go.
One by one, the rest of the patrol make their way on board. Now they head towards the bridge, sweeping rooms as they go. With the guards returning to the ship, the patrol has only seconds to reach the bridge unseen.
Stand by. Go.
Amphib's newest member sticks to the drills and keeps pace with his colleagues. The patrol makes it to the bridge completely undetected. The mission a success, the new soldier's performance flawless. Next, it's the turn of Air Troop's 3 newest members.
I remember one time going on a parachute jump at night. There were 7 of us. 2 people broke their legs and another person injured his shoulder.
So I didn't sleep for the entire parachute course, I just had a nightmare. Started at the beginning of the course and finished at the end of the course.
I think I was saying the Lord's Prayer at the time, probably.
The newest troopers of 1 NZ SAS are about to take a quantum leap in their air infiltration skills.
Well, the reason for learning infiltration skills speaks for itself. It's so you can get in there and do your job.
On cycle, the 3 prove their basic parachute ability.
Dangle and thump, you know, you fall and you hit the ground hard.
He has to learn how to jump out of a plane at freefall level, if that's to be a speciality.
For Air Troop's 3 newest soldiers, the objective is to freefall from altitudes up to 12,000 feet, navigating long distances across the sky completely on their own. There is absolutely no margin for error. The first port of call is not a Hercules transporter, but a simulator. Here, the 3 troopers can learn the art of skydiving without risking life and limb. But it takes time to master freefall.
It will take him a number of years to accrue the necessary experience to become a master freefall within the troop. You know, he's at the bottom of the pile of experience.
Finally, Air Troop's new members are deemed ready for their first solo freefall jump. Freefall SAS style bears no resemblance to recreational parachuting. Its purpose is to transport armed soldiers to specific locations without them being seen. At high altitude, the air becomes so thin that breathing without aid can lead to a blackout. But that's not the only obstacle for Air Troop's 3 new soldiers.
I reckon the military can wreck anything that could be fun in civvy world. They put a big pack on you, tell you to get out the back door.
Once out the back, the added weight of the pack sends them hurtling towards Earth at 140 miles per hour. As the air rushes past, each man battles to remain balanced. Once in control, the 3 must navigate to the landing zone. To get there, they become human rockets as they propel across the sky. Over the landing zone, the canopy's open. It's been a textbook air infiltration.
It leads to this process of continuous improvement. Everybody wants to do better next time, and the next time, and the next time, and you're constantly trying to get better and better and better. And it also means that you get to the stage very quickly in a small group of men where you know you can absolutely trust the person in front of you and behind you and to your left or your right.
Before the 5 new troopers will be sent on an overseas deployment, there is much to learn. But their time will come soon enough.
Unlike a lot of conventional forces, they will see action early and often in their operational life.
The operational tempo of the New Zealand Defence Force since the 90s has been incredible, with all the deployments to the UN-type operations and then the problems closer to home.
On every wall of the NZSAS headquarters are images and symbols which act as a daily reminder to its newest members of what being part of this unit is all about: active combat. Too small to fight alone, the New Zealand SAS has proven its ability to fight with its international allies in any theatre of war for more than 50 years. Whether in jungle or desert, the NZSAS's hallmark is versatility. From Malaya in the 50s to the American-led war on terror in Afghanistan today.
Their ability to
undertake challenging missions, to then deliver on those missions.
To go in to do the reconnaissance work that is required and to be involved in the direct action that is required. The SAS have been involved in those sort of operations. They have done their work well. They have been respected by the other forces that they've worked with.
They received a presidential citation for their work alongside American Special Forces in Afghanistan.
If you walk into any bar in Fort Benning, Georgia, where the U.S. Army Special Forces Command is located, and you walk in that bar and you throw down your coin, as it's said, which identifies you as New Zealand SAS, you will be shouted beers until far into the night.
World-class standards and tremendous versatility is what makes a New Zealand SAS soldier. The 5 new troopers are conscious they must prove they have the right stuff too. To function as a highly effective small patrol, the 5 must hone their skills.
Within the patrol, we need an advanced medic, an advanced signaller, we need a tracker, we need a demolitions expert.
You put that all together, and that makes a pretty awesome patrol, doesn't it?
For 15 intensive weeks, the new troopers advance their individual skills.
The main reason we get into photo compression is to reduce the transmission time on the radio. The longer you transmit, the more chance there is that you'll be detected.
We operate only in small teams, so you've got to be able to pick up different skill sets.
As part of a small NZSAS patrol, the 5 must show they have the versatility and variety of disciplines to cope with any situation.
You can't have a unit of just specialists. You need to have cross-skills, cross-functional areas.
Move! Hand-to-hand combat is taken to the next level.
Presume your enemy is bigger, stronger, fitter, faster, more skilled, bent on killing you, and he's armed. If it's kill or get killed, the first thing that he should know is that his airway's been destroyed. His spinal cord's been severed, a finger's gone through his eyeball, his leg is broken.
It's very much about aggression, but at the same time it's also about control.
This is about the most elemental aspects of warfare. One man against another man in the field, using their wits and guile to defeat each other, often in a very deadly embrace.
During this time, the 5 are also taking their troop skills to expert levels. The Amphib troop members work on distance and depth in their diving. Those in air troop increase their heights and distances travelled and at night. And mountain troop adapts ground skills to fit the unique terrain. Wherever possible, the 5 are introduced to real-life settings using live rounds. Here, enemy communications are the designated target of this unopposed mission. Waller Beach Headland is the object of an amphibious assault. Finally, the 15 weeks is over. Next up, a return to inhospitable Waiouru.
You take it for granted when you're training together, because you're just training, or you're going to war together. But underneath it all, you're building up this close friendship and trust that'll last you, even better than your own family ties.
Maybe you rely on each other, your life. You're reliant on the guy next to you to look after you when things are happening and your life's on the line.
You've got to have feelings or else you won't survive. Yeah, you've got to worry about other people, not only yourself. That's the whole thing about the 4-man or the 5-man patrol.
In their 5th month of their advanced NZSAS training, the unit's 5 new troopers are back at Waiouru.
As soon as you get to that signpost saying Waiouru, it starts raining. Guaranteed.
Here on cycle, they learnt a variety of weapons and tactics as they forged basic SAS patrol skills.
They begin to specialize in a much more acute manner in the various disciplines that they're going to need in the places that they're going to be deployed.
Now they must advance these skills to operational level for potential deployment on missions to places like Afghanistan.
is shining what you've got, taking the rough edges off it, and being able to employ it at the right time.
If you're out in the middle of nowhere and it's happening, you make sure your mates are right. You're watching their back.
Everything they've learned in this time at Waiouru will one day be applied in overseas deployment. Gathering intelligence, tracking down enemy munitions, and calling in superior firepower.
Having the discipline, the long-term objectivity to get the information back to an airbase, back to people, so you can execute the bigger job.
As winter drags on, the 5 troopers continue to upskill their abilities. As a patrol, they learn to blend into the landscape. As specialist snipers working in pairs, they must merge seamlessly into any environment. Acquire the concentration to lie in wait for hours at a time. Yet able to respond at a moment's notice. And bullseye a target from up to 800 metres away.
How to pick where the enemy's going to be, how to pick where the enemy's been, how to pick where the enemy is likely to go, and how to pick the enemy before the enemy picks you.
After a long winter, the grounds begin to firm. By now, the 5 are working as an effective NZ SAS combat patrol. But as they practice more direct action training, this time with explosives, the 5 are conscious what they lack and want is actual operational experience. The unit commanders understand this frustration and impatience. They once had it themselves. And one Waiouru winter 50 years ago, so too did the original soldiers of the NZ SAS squadron, waiting for their first overseas deployment to help the British Special Air Service fight communist insurgents in Malaya.
The only way to get at them was to go into the deep jungle. And so this is why they had the SAS who could go into the deep jungle and stay there.
The odds were stacked against the Kiwis. A lack of necessary parachute experience would be their first major hurdle.
But there was an Irish fellow there, and the commander said to him, what do I do if one of these ropes break that I'm swinging on? And the instructor said, well, say after me, our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, and carry on.
Having trained in the snowy mountains of Waiouru, the New Zealanders were badly prepared for the humid jungle conditions. But they gritted their teeth and got stuck in.
Why we would train in the snows of Waiouru in preparation for the humidity and heat of Malaya remains to me a mystery. It was a complete change for us to go through the swamps and just experience the humidity, the rain, and the things like leeches.
You could hear the dead leaves. You could actually hear them rattle as the leeches came towards you. One guy had one up his penis, and we learnt later that you get a cigarette. That's what we did. Cigarette, you just touch him with a cigarette and they fall off.
Slowly, the originals grew accustomed to jungle ways. In particular, the Māori members helped greatly in winning the hearts and minds of locals, who in turn helped them train as trackers, providing vital intelligence.
In those days, I think it was just the attitude of New Zealanders working with other people that fomented that friendship and gained the information.
The originals developed new jungle warfare techniques.
You could only hear the sound of your own movement when you were moving quickly. You couldn't hear the sound of movement or any noise from the opposition.
So we decided to slow down, and we decided to get off the tracks, what we call contouring.
Perhaps we didn't cover as much ground, but I believe we covered the ground much more carefully.
The originals made such a huge impact in this jungle warfare. They were instrumental in bringing down the communists.
The jungle is the same for you and for your enemy. One who makes the best use of the jungle that survives.
Today, the legacy of the originals inspires the 5 new troopers. And after a winter of advanced training, they've taken their skills to the next level. But this training must be put into context.
The first time hopping off a helicopter in the middle of a foreign country, you're a long way from any help should you need it. That can be quite daunting.
The 5 will now take part in a squadron exercise mimicking operational conditions and pit them with experienced NZ SAS troopers.
Those are the guys that will take you and hone your skills.
As dusk falls, the mission begins with the 5 aboard. Their objective, the destruction of 2 enemy targets. The patrol will be dropped into water at speed, a highly risky manoeuvre. The reason the chopper can't slow to deposit the men is to prevent enemy radar from detecting their presence. Although the snows have thawed, the water remains icy cold. But here the soldiers must stay for several hours. By nightfall, the current has carried their numbed bodies closer to the targets. Now they split into 2 teams, the 5 spread among both. Up to their necks in the freezing water, the first team struggles to attach explosives to submerged power lines. The second team heads inland to the mock dam. Like any actual mission, where there is only one chance to complete the task, so too with this exercise. In total silence, the new troopers work to complete the exercise to the standard of their mission-proven colleagues.
You keep your mouth shut and you learn off them. That's what you do, because there's so many guys with amazing skills here.
With the explosives in place, the teams move quickly to their pre-arranged meeting point. On cue, the extraction chopper arrives and the teams are uplifted with all on board. But this is only the first part of the mission. The patrol's success tonight will be gauged by their objective being successfully completed. And it is. Tonight, the 5 have proved themselves amongst their peers. Their time at Waiouru is now over.
They're more physically robust, they're more mentally robust. Their level of expertise has gone up exponentially with the amount of training that they've had.
The next stage in their education can only come from deployment.
Well, that's what you've trained for. You know, fingers crossed, the beeper goes off, you're waiting, hopefully it's you.
Back at HQ, the 5 are invited to experience one of the unit's rare times of formality, and by its standards, pomp. This is the unit's annual regimental dinner, a living roll of honour, where rookies and veterans of the NZ SAS sit side by side.
It's probably the time where everyone sits and reflects. This unit's done a lot, and it will do a lot, and it's important that its heritage is respected.
Your country may be small in numbers, but it's a giant in the size of its contribution to the world. The greatest asset with which New Zealand is blessed is the quality of its people. And the New Zealand SAS epitomises all that is outstanding in this brave country.
Being among illustrious company makes the 5 troopers even more eager to deploy.
When you've got that heritage and that past, it gives strength to the guys. And they know that, you know, people have done it in the past, they can do it.
Those members here tonight from the original squadron and those past members of the unit, you can be assured that today's SAS group maintain the same ethos, strive for the same standards of excellence as you have done.
This is a defining moment for the 5 troopers as they are accepted into the brotherhood, that is, one NZSAS. Soon, it will be their turn.
The guys all believed that you just couldn't just go cold on operations. There was always live firing rehearsals before you went on any operation.
When I spoke to the other guys, they all went through the same process. And you train and train and train and train, and then all of a sudden you're really doing it.
We've got to understand quite clearly, I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, that Operation Claret means that if you are taken on the other side, all knowledge will be denied to your presence over there.
The international war on terror is hotting up. And New Zealand's involvement is being discussed.
If there is to be a deployment, there needs to be the political decision made by the government. Is this an operation that New Zealand should be involved in, and how can we best respond to that? If it is urgent, a small group of ministers will come together. The ministers will consider the situation, be briefed entirely on it. We'll consider whether the preconditions of a New Zealand deployment have been properly met.
For one NZ SAS, whether they deploy or not is in the hands of the government.
Everyone has to be prepared and have everything in order so that if short contingencies arise, then that they're in a position to respond.
While awaiting Wellington's decision, the unit trains to an operational level of capability, OLOC.
So we need to have our bags packed and equipment on the shelves ready to use.
For the 5 troopers, experiencing OLOC will be as close as they get to the real thing.
If we look at Afghanistan, for example, strategic reconnaissance, looking at sensitive sites, exploiting sensitive sites in terms of where munitions have been kept.
In the event of such missions, the unit must be combat ready.
It starts sinking in when you start issuing more specialist equipment, you start focusing on jobs.
The 5 rehearse the dangerous parachute infiltration. At a military airbase, the soldiers run through the operation specifics over and over. First, they'll have to identify a landing spot chosen by agents on the ground. Upon landing, and without being detected, their mission objective is to find and then destroy an enemy weapon site. At some stage, they will encounter an opposing force.
It's a matter of ultimately giving you an insight and preparing you for the real thing.
As the 5 slip into the night, the countdown on this first taste of combat has begun.
People do get killed and hurt, but the job at the end of the day, which is the most important part, has to be completed, even if it's just you by yourself. And it's that type of ideology that the unit teaches. Somebody's got to do it, and you might be the last one in the patrol, and you've still got to try and do that job to achieve the goal that was asked of her. And that's the difference between us and outsiders.
In terrain which resembles the landscape of Afghanistan, a local agent prepares the landing site with a marker. This flare is the only guide for the parachutists. Weighed down with a full pack, weapons, night vision equipment and explosives, the journey to Earth is as dangerous as any mission they will undertake.
You could be falling into an abyss, pure darkness. It's freaky. It really is. You can't explain it unless you go and actually jump at night.
For the 5, the real test now begins. Taking formation, they arc across the sky. Accuracy is everything, with surrounding power lines, roads and lakes all acting as obstacles to the infiltration.
Once you hit the bottom, it's the beginning of your job. You're not only thinking about how you're going to get in, but you're thinking about your mission. Get it done and get out.
Landing safely, they must now track more than 15 kilometres over rugged terrain. The night vision goggles, the only source of illumination. Their mission is an enemy target stockpiled with munitions. Ahead lies the certainty they will encounter enemy forces somewhere along the way.
You know it's going to come thick and fast, and you don't know when it's going to end.
Live ammunition will be used throughout, and like an actual mission, the soldiers have no idea when the enemy will appear or from where. But after 3 hours, there's still been no sign of the enemy, and now the target is at hand. Checking all is clear, the patrol commander commits to going in. While some soldiers trade fire with the enemy, the rest of the patrol lay their charges. Working calmly among the confusion, the troopers complete their task and beat a textbook retreat. The next time they do this will be on foreign soil. The New Zealand SAS is an elite fighting unit, part of an international coalition. Often covertly, it deploys its troops all over the world, helping in humanitarian causes and more recently, the international war on terror. For 5 new troopers, recent world events are about to become a reality.
In an environment where a decision might need to be taken very quickly, within 24 hours, people can be on a plane and heading to the destination where their services may be needed.
The troopers must now play a waiting game. Will they be among those chosen if the government asks the NZSAS to be deployed?
Everyone joins a unit to go on operations. You know, it's what everyone aspires to do.
And so they wait.
You started off at the beginning with the selection, holding on to my Belgian beret, deciding that this was going to be a career for me, and realising that I don't want to go anywhere else.
2 years of training feels short compared to waiting for news.
We didn't publicise what we did, and we had language to cover what we did to our families. You know, they just knew when we went over the hill, or language like that.
When these chaps went somewhere, the wife didn't even know they were on an exercise or it was for real, let alone where they were. They just didn't know.
Everything you've done for the last however many years you're in SAS is up for this.
Finally, the orders come through.
1 minute, you know, you're waiting out to hear who's going. Next minute, yeah, you're going, you're on a plane, let's go.
All 5 troopers are going on their first deployment. Over 50 years ago, Major Frank Rennie trained the original NZ-SAS force to deploy overseas in the name of New Zealand. Now, half a century later, 5 more troopers take their place in this elite lineup.
That's what you've trained for the last 2 years, to get out there and put it all to good use.
It's like an All Black sticking the black jersey on, or a guy sticking the black jersey on for the first time.
You're here to do your job, and that's what gives you all your satisfaction, is doing your job and doing it to the best you can. Knowing that you're carrying on a legacy.
With maximum focus but minimum fuss, the 5 troopers load their equipment ready for imminent departure. Unlike conventional soldiers, there's no fanfare for this unit on deployment. What the NZ-SAS has done in the past, and will do in the future, must remain a closely guarded secret, as these 5 are about to find out.
Given that the government and the SAS have a neither confirm or deny policy, we will never know the full extent of places to which these fellows are sent.
This is the moment when 5 troopers become NZ-SAS soldiers.
This program was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.